Okay, so this is a long overdue video. I know y'all want to know what's in my wallet, so today we're gonna bust it out. And while this is not entirely just a credit card channel, I think it'd be useful to share with you guys the 11 credit cards I currently have in my rotation, because I've made quite a few videos about various credit cards, whether they be the AMEX Platinum, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, or anything else. And so today, without further ado, we're going to touch on my current credit card strategy and how I go about utilizing all 11 of my credit cards to the best possible benefit. While I'm trying to explain it based off of this strategy that I have written down and what I use as a mental reminder of what I'm supposed to use for each spending category, I honestly don't utilize all of them on a daily basis, simply because on active duty, you're not constantly spending money on things because the chow hall and the DFAC is always open, and that is free. Housing is also free. And so when I get back to the States and I have to get back into the rotation of utilizing all my cards, then that'll be when I practice what I preach once again. The whole point of credit cards is not to spend money that you don't have, right? It's to maximize the returns that you get by utilizing an effective credit card strategy to basically get paid for spending money on things you would otherwise have to buy anyway with, let's say, a debit card or cash. So for those of you guys that have been around for a while, you would know that I enjoy utilizing my spending categories and maximizing them to the best benefit based off the type of card that I'm using for that particular category. Now, the 11 cards I have in my rotation right now are the AMEX Platinum, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, the AMEX Delta SkyMiles Reserve, the AMEX Hilton Aspire, the AMEX Gold, the Capital One Venture, the Costco Rewards Card, the USAA Cash Rewards Card, the Bank of America Cash Rewards Card, the Discover It, and the Amazon Prime Rewards Card. I know that was a lot, but the order I'm gonna go in this video is the most expensive in terms of the annual fee for the card to the least expensive or $0 annual fee cards. That's just the way I have it laid out in my tracker. There's no particular method you have to do this, but I think it's easiest explained in justifying the annual fee I have to pay for each card with the type of benefits and rewards I get out of them in my credit card strategy. Now, with the way I structure the use of my credit cards, I have this laid out pretty simply here in this chart that I'll show you guys, or this spreadsheet rather. I have the credit card first, which is obviously the card that it is. I then have the annual fee, just to have a reminder of how much that card is costing me every year. I then have the spending category, which is the only area in which I'll spend money on that card. That way I have a rotation of what needs to go onto that card, short of any bonuses or benefits I might get out of using a card for a particular purchase. I then have the award rate or return percentage for that card, which helps me conceptualize the type of value I'm getting for that specific spending category used on that particular card. Now, at a foundational level, the general approach I take to this is that I have one card, well, at least one card for each spending category. That means that whenever I go spend money on anything ever, I'll have a card that gives me a great return on that. So for example, if I'm buying a flight, I'll have a card that gives me at least a 5x return or a 5% return on that particular purchase. So I'm getting the maximum best value possible for having purchased that thing that I'm required to spend money on. I think for me personally, it makes sense just to have all your bases covered. So if you ever need to go spend money, you have a card dedicated to that specific purpose. Now I'm gonna briefly touch on each of the spending categories I have laid out and each of the cards that I use in that particular spending category. I'm not gonna do a deep dive on each of the cards because that could be a totally different video, but I think it's most easily explained by telling you guys how it works with which cards that I'm using for that particular type of purchase. So the first big category is gonna be flights/travel. Okay, now it's easy to lump those two together, but there's many different types of travel, right? So you can have flights, you can have rental cars, you can have hotel purchases, you can have incidentals. There's all kinds of different things that go into travel. But for the purposes of this video, we're gonna talk about flights more specifically. And the cards that I currently use for that spending category right now are the AMEX Platinum, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, the Delta SkyMiles Reserve, the Hilton Honors Aspire, and the Capital One Venture. Now you might be wondering, why do you have 5 different cards for the same damn spending category? And the reason is that it's a flex. Anybody that tells you otherwise is just lying, or they don't know the reason why they have that card, because there's no reason to have an overlap of the same spending category except for the fact that I can make a video about it for you guys on this awesome YouTube channel. I'm only half joking with that. There isn't a particular reason that I need to have an Amex Plat and a CSR at the same time, because they generate similar types of rewards and have obviously Chase Ultimate Rewards and Amex membership rewards points that I can use to get the most bang for my buck out of that particular issuer. But just know that for that particular spending category, you should have at least one card that covers that type of purchase. So if I want to go buy a flight, whether it's on Delta or Southwest or Alaska, I can then get a 5x return for that type of purchase. Now I will say that one of the benefits of having multiple premium rewards travel credit cards, especially with regards to flights, is that you can cross-reference different issuers. So for example, the Capital One portal, and then Chase Sapphire Reserve's portal, and then the AMEX portal to see which one has the cheapest flight. Obviously, it would then go to Capital One because they price match whatever price you're seeing anywhere else. But in the event there is a cheaper flight on a different program, you would obviously then want to go for that one versus the other credit card that you have. I think to justify the cost of these premium reward travel credit cards is that if you can utilize all the benefits on that particular card in a given year, the card then practically pays for itself if those are purchases you would otherwise already have to make. And so then I think that makes sense if you then have another travel rewards credit card, once you've gotten past that threshold of the card paying for itself, to then use another. For example, if you utilize the Amex Platts benefits and maximize all of them, then you move on to using the Chase Sapphire Reserve for the rest of the year for all of those benefits. So for this list in particular, for flights, I would be utilizing the Amex Platt, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, or the AMEX Delta SkyMiles Reserve, because those will give me the highest return for that type of purchase. To break it down even further, if I want to talk about the Hilton Honors Aspire in my hotel purchases, I probably want to stick to Hilton properties exclusively if I want to get the best return for those types of purchases. Now, of course, Hilton Honors points aren't worth a whole lot, but having the 14x is still better than having a 1x return on purchasing, a hotel with my Amex Gold. Speaking of the Amex Gold, if I want to purchase anything food related, whether it's takeout, dining in, or buying groceries, I'm absolutely 100% going to use the Amex Gold unless there's a better offer on one of my other cards. The Amex Gold is a pretty good catch-all for everything food related because it's a 4x return, which is honestly pretty hard to beat unless you have a 5x return somewhere else with a specific offer on a restaurant, or if you have a rotating category on a card like the Chase Freedom Flex, which for a particular 3-month period, you can then utilize that card at restaurants or to buy groceries, and they get the 5% return for those 3 months. So if I'm going on a trip, I want to get the most bang for my buck, what I'd probably do is book a flight with, let's say, my Delta SkyMiles Reserve or the Amex Platinum, and then once I get to that destination, let's say I'm going to Cabo or something, well actually I wouldn't be spending money on food in Cabo because I'd probably stay at a resort, but let's say I'm going somewhere in Italy, right? Let's say I'm going to Venice. I would then utilize my Amex Gold once I get to Italy to purchase food and other things once I'm there. Presumably I'd also be staying at a Hilton property because I have the Hilton Honors Aspire, and so then of course what I'd do is utilize that Amex Hilton card for the hotel purchase to get the most returns there as well. I'd say probably the best use case to utilize your credit cards in terms of the best strategy is actually going on a vacation or a trip where you're utilizing points or miles and then maxing out the rewards by actually using the right spending categories for particular cards while you're on that vacation. That would put into practice the best use of actually having all of these cards. The next spending category that matters a lot to me is gas, because the amount that I drive, and of course because I enjoy having a fun car, they're usually not very fuel efficient, and of course having to purchase gas every so often, having a great card for gas rewards is also pretty crucial. Now I've talked about this previously in another video, but I would say the Costco rewards card is a great one because not only does Costco have really cheap gas, but if you get to double dip that with a 4x return on Costco gas, then it's almost a no-brainer to have that card. The other card that I have for that category is the USAA Cash Rewards Plus, which actually does 5% back at gas stations as well as 5% on military bases. I would then go on to say that if you're in the military and you spend a lot of time on military installations, that the USAA Cash Rewards Plus is a great option because it has a 5x return on all military installations and purchases on those bases. Now the last spending category I would say that's probably a big one for most people is online shopping. And to be frank, there isn't a catch-all sort of card that I'm aware of for all of online shopping. But what I would say is a pretty good option is the Bank of America Cash Rewards card because it's a blanket 3x back that you can choose online shopping as your spending category of choice for simple cash back. The caveat to that online shopping credit card situation is that, of course, most people spend time on Amazon if you're shopping online. And so there is the Amazon Prime Rewards card, which is a great card to have if you shop a lot on Amazon because it's 5x back. And honestly, a no-brainer if you spend more than about $1,000 every year on Amazon. So that's pretty much it. My credit card strategy is fairly straightforward, honestly. I have 4 or 5 key spending categories I focus on and just have a card dedicated to each of those categories. So if I need to spend money on a particular thing, it probably falls into one of those 4 or 5 categories, at which point I can then utilize a card to get the best returns on that thing. Something to note with my credit card strategy in general is that, of course, while I'm on active duty, I don't have to pay a fee on any of these cards, which is awesome. But of course, once I get back home and I'm back on reserve status, I'm gonna have to start paying the fee again. So I'm gonna reevaluate which of these cards give me the best bang for my buck and which ones I actually utilize, and probably downgrade some of the cards that have a higher annual fee just because I'm not gonna be using them all the time. Once you get used to utilizing these cards for for these particular categories, it gets a lot easier to budget, at least in my opinion, for each of these spending categories. Just because if you have a card dedicated to a particular thing that you know you're going to have to spend money on, you'll know how much you spent on it because that's going to be the current balance on that card at any given time. I think in terms of the next cards I want to add to my wallet, if there are any at this point, it would probably be that I want to upgrade my Venture to the Venture X. I don't think I want to incur another hard pull in terms of applying for the Venture X separately, although it would be a great sign-up bonus if that is offered. But once again, that's another duplicate because I have the CSR and the AMEX Platinum. It would honestly just be a video to make for you guys, explaining the benefits and the type of value that I've gotten out of the card in my personal experience. And if I really wanted to, I could get the Built MasterCard in terms of getting rewards on rent. Right now I'm not paying rent because I have a mortgage, and so you don't get returns on paying a loan with a credit card basically. But if I did go back to renting, then I would say the Built MasterCard is probably a pretty good choice because that is a pretty big expense you have to make every month, and getting returns on that is a good thing as well. Other than that, I would say I pretty much have a card that covers all the purchases I would need to make, at least that I can think of right now. I don't yet have any business credit cards, even though I have a couple LLCs, which is a whole nother video that I can try to explain and the use of business credit cards, but it's just not something that I've found that I need to use right now or to get a business credit card. But of course, if I do and I add it to my collection of cards, which isn't even that great because there's people out there that have 30, 40, 50 credit cards, which honestly, that doesn't make any sense to me. But of course, if I do get a business credit card, I'll explain to you guys, and of course, you can expect a review on that business credit card and how it went. So that's pretty much it for my credit card strategy. It's very straightforward and makes it easy to utilize my cards on a rotating basis for different spending categories. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop in the comment section below. If there's any specific spending category or card you want me to go into in more depth, I'd be happy to explain that. I try to respond to all the comments that you guys post that are actual questions related to the video that I'm making. So feel free to let me know. Drop a like down below if you enjoyed the video. And of course, I thank you guys for watching as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one.